Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Nate from Driven by Diamond here. After having found all of King Heraldus' journals, we're just going to sit back, relax, and have ourselves a nice little read by the fire. Now, we already ran over part 1 a few episodes back, so I'm just going to insert that clip of me reading it here. King Heraldus' Journal, Part 1. Preface. Written in this book shall be a brief account of my and my men's journey here deep beneath the earth. As for how we came to this place, I shall explain. An unfamiliar and evidently ancient tomb was recently discovered in our library by one of our scribes. Whether the thing had been simply forgotten about or if it had somehow materialized on its own, none can say as of yet. In any event, the book makes reference to a world very near to ours, which is ordinarily imperceptible. Included in this tome were descriptions of strange locales and even stranger inhabitants of these places. A particular note mentioning was of a particular artifact that lies in the possession of some ruler of this realm. The artifact may supposedly endow its owner with a variety of effects such as a natural strength, endless vigor, the reversal of aging, the materialization of various foodstuff, and other such effects. Whether or not such a thing truly exists, one cannot say, but if these tall tales are true, then I would make this artifact my own, and with the assistance of our kingdom's greatest minds, I would bring prosperity to my kingdom. It is for this purpose that we come to this place. We shall seek out its owner and request the artifact. If they will not see reason, then we will have to pry it loose from their lifeless hands. More recently, a watchtower guard reported a most bizarre sighting. During midday, he claimed that off the distance the air began to shimmer and ripple as though caused by a great heat. When this rippling air began to collect a kind of shadow stuff, as he put it, condensing in greater and greater quantities until it seemed to totally solidify into some kind of stony structure. By his account, the rippling ceased afterwards. When he reported this story, he was first accused of drunkenness, but a cursory investigation revealed that there was in fact some kind of stone hut. Now look, that's what we went into. Yeah, that's this. Regarding the aforementioned tome, the stone structure identically matched an illustration found in it. It is clear that the way has been opened to us. We shall make use of this opportunity while we still have it. Day 1, after gathering around myself a group of my bravest and most skilled knights, we collected some supplies together and set off for the marvelous, mysterious stone structure. We crossed the marsh and approached the structure. On the north face, we found an entryway. Within was a staircase leading down to the earth. At the bottom of the flight of stairs, we came to a doorway with a warning engraved above it. Undeterred by the message, we pressed onward. Beyond this doorway, we passed through a series of rooms and some narrow tunnels. Some of these tunnels were rigged with traps of various designs, though after their initial discovery, we managed to continue rather unscathed. At last, we arrived in an unusual chamber. Towards the center of it rested a flat, circular white slab that appeared to rest on top of a stone base. Occupying the chamber was a man of very advanced age. Wondering what such a man would be doing in such a place, we asked him about the matter. He replied stating that he was the keeper of the seal, and he had been awaiting our arrival. Without further prompting, the old man arose from his seated position and shuffled over to the circular slab. Evoking a strength that could not have possibly matched his frail-looking body, the keeper, as he called himself, pulled the slab away, revealing a pit of inky blackness far below. He informed us that he would have to replace the slab after we passed through, though, and that he would pull it away again only once more in 10 days' time. Evidently, our mission would be a timed one. We cast down a rope ladder and began our descent. After Wilhelm, the last member of our party, cleared the gap, the slab above was pushed back into place, and what little life streamed in from above was cut off. Frederick offered to shed some light on our surroundings by lighting a torch. We found ourselves in a rather ordinary-looking cave, although we could scarcely see more than a few feet without the aid of a light source. We agreed that setting up an encampment would be our first priority, so we set about searching for a suitable location. We soon found a defensible position that had sufficient space for our needs. Using the materials we had brought along with us, we set up 2 makeshift defensive walls to block off our camp from the surrounding caves. Afterwards, we set about pitching our tents, lighting the fire, etc. This area will serve us suitably during our time down here. In the morning, we shall split up into 3 groups so as to cover more ground in our scouting. By day's end, we will all report to the encampment to report on our findings. Day 2. Having almost all returned to the encampment, I shall recount briefly our findings. Our party first passed through some rotting caverns to the east. They were filled with all manners and variety of fungi, great and small, porous and bioluminescent. With the air being filled so thickly with the spores, we had need of covering our mouths, lest our lungs be filled with so much detritus. We searched high and low, but found nothing of peculiar note here aside from the wildly proliferating fungi. Finding an exit at the other end of the cavern, we continued on through some caves of gray stone, featuring narrow walls and high ceilings. At one of these ends of these caves, we discovered a tunnel leading onward. At the other end of the tunnel, we came upon a strange cavern. In it rested a mound of grassy earth surrounded by a pond, and in addition to here there grew, of all things, trees! Scraggly, spindly ones, perhaps, but trees nonetheless. How they manage to survive without sunlight is hard to fathom, but they do seem to find some sustenance by some matter. Planted in the earth were numerous gravestones, some of them blank, with the earth before them being newly upheaved. Inhabiting this chamber was an individual with a rather unpleasant countenance. With hunchback and misaligned facial features, it was at first difficult to ascertain whether or not he'd welcome our presence. Despite appearance, he was amicable, although his manner of speaking was strange to us. He inquired us as to our interest in purchasing from him a corpse, but we politely declined. Seeming talkative, I asked if he had any knowledge of the artifact we seek, and he directed us to seek out a tall guy, scary-looking, hard to miss, as he put it. When asked about the artifact's bearer's specific location, the gravekeeper gave us a set of wholly absurd directions. Whether there's any truth to what he said, or if he simply suffers from madness, we will have to see. With the evening drawing near, we set off for the encampment. Finding a different route to it, along the way we came upon Reginald's party and found that Kenneth and Baldwin had been wounded. Here we helped them back to the encampment, finding Leonard's party here, sans Robert. We've tended to Kenneth and Baldwin's wounds as best we are able, but it is quite clear that they will be unable to continue with our search. By Leonard's description, while he and his party were exploring some watery limestone caves to the south, a creature residing in a nearby pool snared Robert by the ankle and dragged him off somewhere. When Douglas came by the pool and shone his torch upon it, naught could be seen but blackness far below. It is possible that Robert has been taken from us for good and all. We will return to the limestone caverns on the morrow to look for any signs of his presence, if he has somehow survived. We cannot very well go chasing after him, however. Our heavy armors would be encumbrance while swimming, and to go without them would render us vulnerable to what undoubtedly lurks in those dark waters, not to mention that we lack a source of light that would not be extinguished by the water itself. The task is simply unfeasible, I must regretfully conclude. We shall visit that place again to search for signs of him, but after that we must press onward with our task. As for the other party's findings, I leave the task of elaborating on them to Leonard and Reginald, they being the best suited to recount such tales. In the morning we shall split up into 3 groups again. Douglas and Frederick will accompany me to the limestone caverns, as they are the most familiar with the area. Reginald will remain here at the encampment to tend and guard our wounded. He should fare fine on his own. The rest of my men will accompany Leonard in farther exploration of the caves westward. Perhaps, as there is the best of our knowledge, one sizable tunnel that we've yet to investigate. But at day's end, we will all return here to report on our findings. The second journal. Part 3. Day 3. We have all managed to return to the encampment, albeit but not entirely unscathed. Our party thoroughly searched the limestone caverns for any possible signs of Robert. Fully understanding the dangers of this place, we were careful to avoid getting close to any of the large pools there. Despite the quietude of the cavern, I could not shake the impression that we were not alone there. On a couple of occasions I caught a glimpse of some shadowy figure just beyond the glow of our torches. We tried calling out to him in the event that he was someplace that we could neither see nor reach, but to no avail. Our search was in vain. After conducting a search of the caves most near to the limestone caverns, we returned to the encampment. We found that Leonard's group had not yet returned from their search. We also found that Kenneth's condition has worsened. It is uncertain if he will make a recovery. On the other hand, Baldric, although bruised and battered, seems to be in good spirits. So that is a small amount of much-needed good news. It has been some time now, and Leonard's party has returned. They recount that they passed into a series of caverns that were totally infested by giant spiders. A horrendous sight it must have been. They struck down a great many number of the creatures and used their torches to burn away a large number of their egg sacs. However, one of the wretched things managed to sink its fangs between the plates of Gerald's armor, and he has since fallen dreadfully ill. He has consumed some of the medicinal herbs that we've brought along and is now resting. Between the anguished expression on his face and the pallor of his skin, it is clear that the spider's venom is taking effect. It seems that all we can do is pray that he makes a recovery. If nothing else, Lem's party cleared the way through the aforementioned spider-infested caves. If there is anything else there to be found, the area is now relatively safe. We have exhausted all of our possible leads up to this point, aside from the spider-infested caves. If the path to the artifact is anywhere, it must have been there. Else we have somehow overlooked something in our explorations thus far. I feel that we are drawing closer to our goal, yet still seems a ways off. In the morning we shall split up into 2 groups. Maximilian, Douglas, and Osborne will remain here to watch over our sick and injured, as well as hold the encampment. Lately monsters have been taken to beating upon the walls that we have set up, and it would not do well for us to return to our sanctuary only to find it destroyed. I am confident that they will be able to manage it on their own. The rest of the men will accompany me to the formerly spider-infested caverns to conduct a more thorough investigation of the area. There must be something more there. I'm sure of it. Part 4. Day 4. It is with a heavy heart that I must write now of Kenneth's passing. Over the night he finally succumbed to his injuries, and we found his body cold and unresponsive this morning. To bury his body in such a place would be a flagrant disrespect to him. When we finally depart from these dreadful depths, we will endeavor to bring his body with us so that we may give him a proper burial on the surface. Having that said, there is little time for mourning. We must continue onward with our quest, though the sting of this loss pains us all. Right, there's part 5 and day 6. Okay. What a harrowing journey this has been. Now that we've found a safe haven of sorts, we will stay here for a time before continuing onwards. This is part 5. This is found in the witches thing. I'll note that all that has transpired after our party left the encampment. Traveling westward, we proceeded to the previously spider-filled caverns. There, fire-blackened carapaces being all that remained of the wretched things. Our farther exploration of the caves went without incident, save for our discovery of the path ahead. Following this lead, we came to a small rectangular chamber that could have only been shaped by a craftsman's touch. Before us loomed a gateway, the dim torches on either side contrasting against the darkness beyond. With our torchlights guiding our steps, we continued on. Probing the nearby corridors, we found that they twisted in every which way, confounding our sense of directions. We were trapped in a labyrinth! Many a vile creature inhabited these dark halls, and our wanderings seemed to stretch on for an age. I'm still unsure of how it happened, but at one point we were separated from Ulrich and Leonard. We searched the nearby corridor, but without success. A short while later, we caught a glimpse of light from beyond the corner. Sure this must have been our lost companions, we rushed to meet them. Instead, we encountered some variety of monster that I've never laid eyes on before. Lit aflame, this thing is like a floating mess of smoke and gyrating golden rods. Alerted to our presence, the thing shot a stream of flames in my direction that I narrowly avoided. Quick on his feet, Krudrick closed in and sank his sword deep into what must have been its core, stilling the monstrosity and extinguishing its flames. Not long after, we saw another shower of light began to emerge from a passageway above. We approached warily, but were most relieved to find that it was Leonard and Ulrich safe and sound. However, the passageway above was well out of arm's reach, and the height was such that one would surely injure himself if he fell. The coordination was difficult, but our 2 groups managed to reunite at a stairway that led to the labyrinth's uppermost level. From this stage, we had to be most cautious to ensure that we would not fall from one of the many bridges that span the lower levels hallways. After much more wandering, we finally reached what appeared to be an exit from the labyrinth. Following this narrow hallway, we entered upon a circular chamber, at the center of which rested a staircase that spiraled down into parts unknown. By our clocks, it was already well into the morning of the 5th day, and we were all well worn out. Though conditions were far from preferable, we would be unable to continue without some rest. We spent a few hours recuperating in this chamber. The bulk of our party rested at a spot as far from the entrance as possible, and every hour 2 of us swapped places for watch duty. Thankfully, the chamber was rather well lit, so any approaching threats would not go unnoticed. We continued on in the evening, proceeding down the spiraling staircase. Down and down and down it went until the walls gave way to a most horrible sight. All around was a vast expanse of space, and in numerous places the rocky landscape was lit brightly by roiling pools of fire. The air was filled with smoke and the stench of sulfur. Surely we must have descended into hell itself, I thought. We reached the bottom level of the staircase and began our explanation of this strange realm. Along the way, we came across all manner of beasts, felling one after the next. Our wandering stretched on for an age, but at last we came upon something of interest. Tucked away in one of the corners of this realm was a structure of dark red bricks that resembled a fort. Investigation revealed that the fort was unoccupied, fortunately. In addition, the fort was furnished with a number of beds, indicating that it may have been some sort of barracks. Whatever the case, it was a welcome sight to us all. We've taken up residence here for this time being, and we are all sufficiently rested. We will set out again in search of our goal. Even now I can feel that familiar pulling in my chest at that spurring drive onward. The artifact must be here, close by. Journal 6, Part 1. Oh my word, 50 pages. So there we go. Day 7. I note here that we have accomplished our goal of retrieving the artifact that we sought. A stone of peculiar properties called the Eye of Boraz. I would note that this more exuberance, achieving our goal, did not, in the process, necessitate dire sacrifices. Having had an opportunity to recover at the fort, we set out in the morning. Once more we journeyed through those dark caverns filled with the stench of brimstone. Beast after beast threw themselves at us, one felled after the next. The trek was brutal, but at last we happened upon a landmark of interest, the one that led to our object of our desire. We set in one of the walls of this cavern was a gate of tremendous size. Torches blazed brightly on either side of it. Upon approaching, a chamber beyond could be glimpsed. As we drew near, the gate shuddered to life, lifting slowly as it protested with many a groan and screech. Finally, with a booming thud, the gate reached its zenith. All around was eerily quiet. We proceeded inside. Just when the last member of our party, Ulrich, cleared the threshold, the gate came crashing back down, trapping us inside. Evidently, there would be no easy escape. Having no other choice, we proceeded into the chamber beyond, a vast hall that could be considered grand, were not in the most infernal variety. Torches lined the length of it. Large pillars of that dark red brick rose up to a ceiling obscured by shadow. Macabre chandeliers hanging down from some of the arches. They glowed menacingly. At the far end of this hall could be seen a throne of pearly white color. A figure sat upon it, seemingly the only inhabitant of this place. We approached the throne. The figure, clad in a gloomy golden armor, did not stir. Just as I was about to speak, the sound of so many joints popping emanated from the figure as it convulsed for a few seconds. After a moment of stillness, it fixed its visored gaze upon me and slowly rose from its throne. Its stature was both imposing in height and unnerving in the relative elongation of its limbs. As it drew a wicked black sword from the scabbard at its side, we knew that there would be no peaceful resolution with our conflict. With the rest of the hall behind us, we retreated some distance to give ourselves some space. Our blades were held at the ready. As our adversary descended from the throne's platform, streams of black smoke, now illuminated by dull torchlight of the hall, could be seen flowing through the apes in our adversary's armor. With each ponderous step the figure took, the flow of smoke seemed to intensify. The waves of murderous intent being cast off from it were nearly paralytic in their strength. I hadn't believed a being could be capable of such a malice as to be perceptible to the senses. I could have sworn that there was a faint gust of wind accompanying this aurora of malice as well, as the nearby torches began to flicker and sputter seemingly in response to it. Having reached the floor of the hall, our foe assumed a ready stance, but before we knew what happened, the golden figure had leapt through the air at a frightening speed, sending the force of its hurtling bulk into a dreadful punch. It struck Wilhelm squarely in the chest, sending him flying back into a pillar, crashing. He crumpled to the floor thereafter, incapacitated. There was no time to tend to Wilhelm, however. Now with our enemy before us, it fought with complete abandon. Every movement, every swing of its vile sword had the full force of its wrath behind it. Were it not itself a demon, it surely must have been possessed by a most terrible one. Didn't they already use that line? Though its berserk rampage placed us in mortal peril, there was a slim opportunity that it provided. The force of its onslaught was sufficient to, on many occasions, cause its weapon or gauntlet-clad fist to become embedded in a wall or pillar, if only temporarily. Still, such moments proved vital to strike at its body through the gaps in its armor. Following a grueling battle, we finally managed to whittle our adversary down to the point of defeat. With a pitch-black substance that must have been blood spilling upon the hall's ornate carpet, the gold-armored creature collapsed to the ground in a heap. After I gave it one stab to ensure the thing was dead, its body did not stir. Finally, the hard part was over. Or so we hoped. With the battle over, we could at last tend to Wilhelm. He had not moved from where he had fallen. I came closer to examine him, trepidation caught in my throat on account of his stillness. I saw then that his breastplate had been severely caved in from the blow. Small pools of blood formed where he sat. His breathing had totally ceased. The evidence was plain, though I could scarcely bear it. Wilhelm, too, had been taken from us. Just then a noise emanated from the corpse of our fallen foe. The sounds of an anguished groan and that of a newly lit campfire intermingled and increased in intensity by the moment. The golden creature slowly picked itself back up. It was now practically wreathed in black smoke, and tongues of fire began to creep out from within the creature's armor. It began to shamble towards me. Will this nightmare ever end? I thought desperately. The figure continued to lumber towards me, though it seemed to have lost its former vigor. The flames continually grew, until the figure was little more than a walking orb of fire. The figure fell to its knees. Its face soon met the ground. Its body burned intensely for several moments more. Then, as the flames died down, silence settled upon the hall. Where once its body lay, there now was naught but ash and charred remains of its armor. At long last, it was well and truly dead. The ground reverberated beneath our feet. A rumble shook the hall, and a fine rain of dust fell down from the ceiling. An earthquake, it must have been. My thoughts raced for panic. I feared for a cave-in. To be buried alive after all this. Is this how it's to end? I pleaded in my thoughts. Thank the stars, the masonry of the hall held firm. After those few frightful moments, the reverberations passed, and all was quiet once more. Again I felt that tugging sensation pull at my chest. It seemed to lead me in the direction of the ashes. The sensation only grew stronger as I approached the charred remains of that golden-clad creature. I wondered, could there be something there? Using the end of my sword, I drew it through the ashes to see if there were aught else there besides the ruined plates of armor. After a few passes through, my sword contacted something hard and immobile. Having watched my probing of the ashes, Ulfred came over asking if I'd found anything. I told him that there seemed to be something there and asked him to help me sift through the ashes. After a few moments digging, we unearthed a brilliant crystalline orb that was roughly the size of my clenched fist. At one end of the orb was a wide ring of some variety of iridescent material. The ring gave me the impression of an iris, like that of an eye. I placed my hand upon the orb with the intent to retrieve it from the ashes, but the very moment I did so, I seemed to undergo some variety of transportation, as though I had been sucked into the orb itself. I'm not sure I've ever undergone something so peculiar before. A moment of blackness, then, as my vision cleared, all around me could be seen faceted crystal through which shone a curious blue light. Then a voice called out to me.
Heraldus, be this your name?
Shaken up as I was by the recent events, I could but nod my head. The disembodied voice spoke again.
You have my gratitude for freeing me from the body of that wretch April. I am unsure of exactly how long he has kept me prisoner, but many eons must have passed by now.
A multitude of questions inundated my mind, but I had to remember our purpose here. If I asked the voice if it knew anything about the artifact we sought. The voice responded.
I would certainly hope so, for I am that which you seek. The eye of Arboraz am I. Though I have been long since been separated from my master, still, I am not without power. However, in my prolonged stay in these dreary depths, I fear to say that I have become enfeebled. If I am to be of use to you, there is something that must be done first. I would be in debt to you if you would hear my request. Will you listen to my plea?
I assured the voice that I would.
You shall be duly rewarded for your efforts. It has been an unimaginably long time since I last saw the sun. I wish for nothing more than to glimpse it again. Should you fulfill my request, it shall be my sincerest pleasure to share all that I know with you for the remainder of your mortal days. You will find that once so emboldened again, I may provide you with a variety of other services as well, some rumors of which you surely must have come across by now. What say you to this arrangement?
I gladly accepted the eye's offer.
It's just as well that you do, for time is not on your side at this present. Though you slew his body, Agnes' spirit still lives on, and he will doubtlessly be searching for a new body to reclaim me. Like yourselves, he also paid dearly for my acquirement, and he would be loath to give me up. But that's another story for another day. Right now you have another problem on your hands. With his death wail, he has ordered his many underlings to seek out and slaughter you and your men, so that he can then secure the eye again. His legions have already heard his call, and they are on their way at this very moment. Should you decide to burn yourselves with your fallen comrade, it is uncertain if you would make the trip back. If you hope to survive, you may need all the sword arms you can get. After all, what would the point of your journey be if you were to perish here? Still, the choice is ever yours.
Wilhelm, I had hoped that we might lay your body to rest properly. Must we commit you to this hellish place? After giving a moment to consider it, the eye called out,
We cannot wait any longer. Prepare yourself.
The soft blue light all around me quickly shifted into intense white light. Following this, blackness. When I opened my eyes, I found myself again kneeling by the pile of ashes. My hand still rested on the eye, its warm beneath my fingers, and I wondered if it was just because it retained heat from the inferno earlier, or if it naturally produced warmth on its own. Ulrich caught my attention, asking me if I was all right. I assured him that I was, but I also asked if I had done anything unusual. He quizzically looked at me and told me that after I placed my hand upon the orb, I simply looked at it for a few moments. I thanked Ulrich and called our party together. I recounted to them my bizarre experience. We had finally found the item of our quest. They were not glad to come to the decision, but the other men were in agreement that the stakes were too high to risk burdening ourselves with Wilhelm's remains. Still, they would defer to my decision. Though I'm sure that you would understand were you still with us, Wilhelm. I cannot shake the feeling they have done you a disservice here. If I have, I hope that you might forgive me for it. Having come to that conclusion, we then had need of extricating ourselves with the artifact in tow. I then attempted to lift the eye, and I really must put the emphasis on the word attempt. For the artifact, despite being roughly the size of my fist, was heavy enough to require practically all of my strength to carry it. Frederick offered his muscle for this task, which I gladly left to him. Having endured this ordeal, we were at wit's end. We opted to rest at the barracks first before reuniting with Maximilian's group at the encampment, and then departing from this god-forsaken place once and for all. The trek back to the barracks was a bloody one. The numerous beasts we came across threw themselves upon our blades with a newfound intensity. When we nearly reached the brink of exhaustion, we made our way back into the barracks and barricaded the door. Not long after, our pursuers beat themselves against it continuously. This assault lasted for a few excruciatingly long minutes, but thankfully the door had been constructed perhaps a little too solidly. Since the door would not buckle, the attacks ceased. Since it is obvious that they were not about to simply leave us be, perhaps they hoped to wait us out so that we expend the last of our provisions. Or mayhap they have gone to fetch a battering ram. In either case, it has bought us precious little time to recuperate. As I write, the clock approaches midnight. Tomorrow is the 8th day of our journey here in the underworld. If fate smiles upon us, we should be able to make it back to the seal in time for it to open, assuming the seal keeper holds true to his word. Only time will tell. For now, we rest. As soon as we find ourselves rested in the morning, we shall depart from this place. Hopefully this will be the last we see of it. Well, those were the readings of the journals of King Heraldus. As to what exactly happened, it's not quite clear. It ends abruptly, so they may have starved in here as the beast kept them at bay. They may have been slaughtered on their way back to the seal. Or perhaps they were lucky enough to make it back in one piece. That does leave a few questions behind. All the artifacts that they mentioned, including the Ragnag's glint, and where is it? And the Eye of Aboraz were still left down here. Well, the Pigman Chief actually achieved that himself, but the Eye of Aboraz was still down here. Yeah, this thing is, this is one heavy motherfucker. Although by jumping continuously, you can kind of avert that. That is beside the point. The point is, we do not know exactly what happened to King Heraldus and his men, unless there was a 7th journal, which I have not found. However, to find it anywhere else but near the entrance to this forsaken place would not make any sense. So, to finish this off, I'm going to venture out there and see what I can find. I hope that I'm able to remember my way back to the seal, if not at least barely. There it is. This is the way back. So here's the seal. So it wasn't too far from where they set up their encampment. But I do not see any chests or anything around here where his final journal may be, unless it is actually up in there, or possibly even in the castle itself. I've gathered up all the artifacts of King Heraldus and his men. As we make our final departure, there's one other question that remains unanswered. Who opened or broke the seal? Did King Heraldus and his men fight their way out and break the seal from the inside? Is this skull here in the corner the remains of the gatekeeper? Oh. Questions are to remain unanswered as they have been lost to the depths of time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining me on this adventure. This has certainly been one of interest and intrigue. Probably one of the Minecraft experiences that I'll never forget. Thank you. Hope you guys stay great. And don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe to my channel.